EX Fire Red and Leaf Green was maybe our first nostalgia set. It only included Pokemon from the first generation and was TPCI's way of saying, hey, we didn't print those cards from base fossil, but here's some nice callbacks to all of those cards. Included in here, we got some absolute banger cards. We got the Nidoqueen that made its way to the top of the World Championships. We got Pidgeot, one of the best utility cards ever printed. The infamously powerful Blastoise EX, and one of my favorite trainer cards of all time, Versus Seeker, or VS Seeker, depending on who you ask. But this is a series where we're not celebrating the best cards in the set, we're celebrating the ones that were really good or interesting or had amazing artwork that have been underappreciated over time. Cards that could have had a chance in the metagame if they hadn't been shoved out by some of the larger players. But as per tradition, before we get into the underrated cards, we want to set the tone by talking about what I think is the worst card in the set, and this time it is Gyarados EX, which pains me because I love Gyarados cards. If you get past the fact that all available basic Magikarps that can evolve into this have 30 HP and are absolute snipe bait, you can go, okay, well, a stage 1 with 130 HP, that's not bad. But then you get down to these attacks. You got a 2 energy attack on a stage 1 Pokemon that has a chance to do nothing. Statistically, yeah, you're probably going to deal 40 damage and discard an energy. But again, this is a 2 prize Pokemon that I'm investing at least 2 energy into, and you're telling me that I might just waste an entire turn, let alone invest 5 energy into this for 100 damage. Being a water type in the EX era does not get you very far, and with this level of attack efficiency, you are not seeing play. And that's without even mentioning the retreat cost of 3. The first card on my underrated list is almost an honorable mention because it did see some top tier play, but mainly in one deck, and I feel its potential could have been much greater than that. Electrode EX is a stage 1 with 90 HP, and its main purpose is to blow itself up, give your opponent 2 prizes, and then add a bunch of energy to your board. Most famously, this was used to power up Dark Tyranitar, which was a single prize Pokemon, one of the most ridiculous single prize Pokemon ever printed. But you can see how advantageous adding 5 energy cards to this Dark Tyranitar would be, even at the cost of 2 prizes. But what's often overlooked on Electrode EX is the fact that it's got a pretty good attack stapled to it as well. You can easily discard a bunch of energy from your board to deal a ton of damage with Crash and Burn, knowing that on your next turn you're just going to blow Electrode EX up with extra energy bomb and get all of those energy back. The EX era could get pretty grindy, and so games could go long, you get a lot of energy onto your board. You don't have to blow up Electrode as soon as it hits the field. You actually have some opportunity to deal some massive damage with Crash and Burn before you do so. Plus, any energy you have attached to Electrode EX to attack with will go to the discard pile before the second half of Extra Energy Bomb kicks in, so those energy will be available to move back onto whatever Pokemon you want to load up. Just the fact that you can grab 5 of any type of energy card in formats full of amazing special energies, there's a lot of potential here that I feel wasn't tapped into outside of Bombtar. I'll also add here that going down 2 prizes isn't nearly as much of a downside once Rocket's admin is in play, because you're going to get a little bit of more card advantage than your opponent. So then let's move on to Dodrio, and it may be just because I've been revisiting a lot of base fossil decks, where Retreat Aid Dodrio is just a staple. It helps decks be so much more efficient. I understand that with Dunsparce being one of the star starting Pokemon of your EX formats, you don't really focus on retreating all that much because it just does it automatically, gets out of the active position so your main attackers can get in there, but you're still dealing with a lot of special conditions, a lot of stall tactics, a lot of control, decks that want to trap your worst Pokemon in the active position, and Dodrio can help get it out of there. The one big caveat being that if Dodrio is the one trapped in the active position, you can't use Retreat Aid to retreat it for free unless you have another Dodrio on the bench. In that case, the Retreat Aids will stack for your active Pokemon depending on how many Dodrios are on your bench. A decent support Pokemon with a decent attack for 2 energy that has a resistance to fighting, which is relevant sometimes. I understand why I didn't see big metagame play, but I think this right here is a good draft all-star. Excellent and limited. Now let's talk some Raichu, which I consider to be an electric version of Black Star Promo Mewtwo. It is a stage 1 instead of a basic, but it does have 80 HP. For 1 energy, Recharge is going to search your deck for up to 2 lightning energy and attach them to Raichu. In this point, I think it's better than Black Star Mewtwo because it's searching your deck, not your discard, so less work for you. You're also thinning your deck by 2 cards, and in Pokemon, thinning is winning. On your next turn, you're going to have a fully powered Thunder Reflection with a free energy per turn to attach to anything else you want. It's going to deal 50 damage, not great for the rate, but you also have the option to move any number of those lightning energy to another one of your Pokemon. So you're powering yourself up, you're attacking for 50 damage, and then you're also setting up an alternative attacker for your deck, something like a Manectric EX or another big electric type. This card isn't as explosive as the Electrode EX that we've already talked about, but it's still a great support card for those electric type decks that just want to set up for massive damage later in the game. Not only are you dealing decent chunks of damage with Thunder Reflection, but you're just setting up future KOs from whatever you're moving those lightning energy to. Before we get into the second half of the video, I would like to take some time to acknowledge some appropriately rated cards. Nothing that is too underused or spectacular, but I would still like to talk about. The first one being this Persian. Persian is a Pokemon that I really like. It's got this lovely artwork where it's hanging out on some Greek isle. And because it's a normal type Pokemon, it can fit into any deck. And just look at those cheap attack rates. For 1 energy, auto poison. For 2 energy, 30 damage and guaranteed confusion. It's not going to bust any formats, but it's a solid card that could be fun to play. Especially in limited, this could be an all-star. That thick skin Pokebody could be relevant as the EX era is full of special conditions. Similarly, Raticate is a stage 1 normal type with the thick skin body, so it's splashable into any deck so that you can utilize its nice utility attack in pickup. For 1 energy, you can search your discard pile for a Pokemon, a trainer, and an energy, put them into your hand. That's a pretty good rate for getting 3 cards back in your hand. You're not going to need to use pickup too many times to recycle what you need to, so quick attack is another decent option. For the same energy you had attached for pickup, you're either going to deal 10 damage or 50 damage. If you've got a better attacking option, Raticate has free retreat, so you can put it right back on the bench and opt to do nothing after recycling. Again, nothing that's going to make your eyes pop right through your glasses and tongue hang out on the table, but still 2 cards that I thought were worth mentioning. So back to underrated cards. I want to talk about Marowak, and I think this is the first holographic Marowak we got. We just mentioned 2 appropriately rated cards that are both normal types. Notably, they're weak to fighting. Fighting is a relevant type in the EX formats. There's a lot of big cards that are weak to fighting. And I think Marowak might have been a lost option for a late game sweeper. For 2 energy, you can snipe for 30. That's decent enough. And then for 3 energy, you can deal 30 damage plus 10 more for each basic and evolution card in your discard pile. It's almost something that you can build around. Use cards like TV Reporter that are going to help you discard. That way you can just fill your discard pile full of Pokemon cards, pumping yourself up so that on turn 3 you can deal up to 90 damage with Vengeance. 180 if you're hitting for weakness on your dark types, your steel types, your normal types. Getting Pokemon in the discard is a little more difficult than getting trainers or tools or supporters. So this isn't going to hit as hard and fast as something like a Banette, but Pokemon hitting the discard is just a natural result of playing the game, which is why I said this could be such a late game potential threat. Maybe you've fallen behind a bit, you start building up the Marowak on your bench, you hit your opponent with a Rocket's admin, and then you're back in business for a comeback. This does bank pretty heavily on the fact that your opponent is likely to be weak to fighting. One of the major reasons that Metacham and Nidoqueen were at the top of their formats. But even so, a late game option to deal 90 damage flat is pretty solid. Or Alternatively, you can just snipe for 30. Start taking out your opponent's Pokemon that are trying to hide on the bench. An awful lot of Stage 1s on the list this time around. Let's talk about another Stage 1 that is also a fighting type. Primeape. 70 HP on a Stage 1, not great. 40 damage for 2 energy, that's okay. Weakness to Psychic, depends on the format of whether or not that's relevant, but free retreat. What I really want to look at here is this toss attack. That's a double colorless. This is a splashable fighting type. You may discard from your hand as many Technical Machine and Pokemon Tool cards as you like. This attack does 30 damage times the number of cards you discarded. The reason it's this high on the list is you can build around this card in the same way that you build around Dark Slowking, which had its own archetype. Dark Slowking's litter attack also played off of discarding Pokemon Tool cards, but that attack caps at 80 damage, whereas Primeape's toss attack doesn't have a cap to it. Using the same type of build, it is pretty easy to get at least 3 tool cards into your hand and discard them to deal 90 damage or more. 4 double colorless, so you could even splash it into Dark Slowking as a backup attacker in a format that cares about fighting weakness. This Primeape doesn't really have any other feature to it other than this attack, unlike Dark Slowking that also has a power that can help you control your opponent's draws. But there's still some potential here. But the card at the top of my underrated list is Berill. You could easily make an amazing speed drill deck out of this card. It has free retreat, it has great attack efficiency, it's in a format with Rare Candy and Pidgeot, so it's easy to set up. I think this card would have seen so much more play if the early EX formats weren't so Blaziken heavy. First turn attacking, you Rare Candy into Berill, Poison Sting for 1 energy, 20 damage, auto poison. Already putting your opponent on the back foot. Spend your second turn drawing or searching out the rest of your evolutions, getting more Berill into play with Rare Candy and Pidgeot. Turn 3, you're dealing either 110 or 140, but with free retreat, so if you just need to deal Poison Sting damage over and over again, you can switch between your Berill. If you're scared of ATM Rock, there's a Kakuna with 70 HP that deals poison whenever it's damaged. You have options for mid-range Berill play or full-on Speed Drill. This is a card that I know saw some play, but over time got lost in the shuffle of big meta game defining decks. I love bugs, and I love Speed Drill as a recurring archetype. I even made a whole video about it a little while back. That'll be in the TCG History playlist. That'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if I missed any underrated cards that you feel need some attention from EX Fire Red and Leaf Green. Stay tuned for more underrated videos, as well as a ton more deck lists that will be uploaded throughout the summer. I hope to see you there. Bye bye now.